Good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to continue with the child abuse and neglect part 2, which I'll be covering about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, maternal deprivation syndrome, shaken baby syndrome, cultural health practices which are suspected as child abuse and child neglect. Every child is a different kind of flower, and all together make this world a beautiful garden. So, with this quote, I would like to start the today's presentation. Starting with Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome by
Child is a different flower, and life is a beautiful garden.
Munchausen syndrome by proxy is named after Baron von Munchausen, which was a fictional character in 18th century in Russia, and he was known for embellishing the stories of his life and experience to gain attention. In this syndrome also, the mother tends to gain attention, sympathy, or reassurance to themselves by somebody else. And for this, they often seen symptoms are hospital shopping, extensive medical records, and often well-spoken and intelligent person. Dr. Richard Asher in 1951 was the first one to describe this syndrome, and he described that the adults who produce sign of illness for themselves, and it was known as Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome by proxy was described by Dr. Roy Meadow in 1977, and this was to prevent the preservation of deception in respect to child. Definitions of Munchausen syndrome: intentional production or feeing of physical and physiological signs and or symptoms for the purpose of assuming the risk role. And Munchausen syndrome by proxy is same, but by symptoms in another person who is under the individual's care for the purpose of assuming the sick role by the proxy. The most clinically useful definition by Bools et al. In 1992 was the illness in a child is usually fabricated by a parent or someone in the loco parentis, and the child is presented for medical assessment and care, usually persistently, resulting in multiple medical procedures, and the perpetrator denies the knowledge of etiology of the child's illness. Acute signs and symptoms of the illness decrease when the child is separated from the perpetrator. It is a factious disorder which is imposed on the mother on the by the mother on the child, and she describes the child to be continuously sick, and they false symptoms are seen in the child. False illness or false injuries could be seen in the child, which could be given by the mother to the child. The mother exaggerates the physical or the physiological symptoms of the child and fakes illnesses. They may give child some medicines or alcohol to develop certain symptoms. It is also known as the fabricated illness syndrome, pediatric symptom falsification, illness induction syndrome, or the factious disorder by proxy. It is a serious and life-threatening condition. Even though the fathers have not been identified, but majority of the abusers belong to the mother's category. And the psychiatric disorder by DSM-V, the provisional criteria places it under the factious disorders by the proxy, while some have described it as a medical abuse. The incidence and prevalence, the true incidence in many cases go undetected, because when the mother complains of an illness of a child, it is generally considered as a genuine condition, and therefore it may go undetected. The incidence could be 2 to 4 cases per million as described by Alexander et al. In 1990, and 2.5 million cases annually are among 2.5 million cases annually, 1,000 are related to the Munchausen syndrome by proxy. The fatality rate is approximately 10%. The etiology for this could be developmental disturbance in the mother, current life stressors, marital discord of the mothers, suffered themselves with the same, and underlying personality disorders in the mothers. The common illness which could be reported could be vomiting, diarrhea, allergic reactions, asthma, and seizures. The causes of the symptoms could be bleeding like hemoptysis, hematuria, hematemesis, epistaxis, due to mother adding his or her own blood into the child's urine, stool, emesis, or added child's own blood to the stool. This could be done by administration of warfarin or any other agents. The neurological signs such as sedation, coma, seizure, or gait disturbance could be due to the administration of sedatives, insulin, salt, or other agents. And the fabricated history could be gained in this. Apnea could be manually suffocated or poison the child, or fabricated incidents. Gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea, vomiting, or both could be seen due to administration of the emetics, salt, phenolphthalein, or laxatives, and added stool to the emesis, or fabricated history of the same. Rashes could be seen due to application of caustic or the dyes, or administered drugs. Fever as falsified temperature, either while could be reported by mother. The 7 signs and symptoms which are commonly seen are dramatic but inconsistent medical history, unclear symptoms that are not controllable and that become more severe or change once treatment has begun, predictable relapses following the improvement in the condition, and extensive knowledge of the hospitals, appearance of new or additional symptoms following the negative test results, willingness or eagerness to have the medical test, and history of seeking treatment at numerous hospitals or the clinics, and visiting various different doctors in different cities. The symptoms given by mother can be fake, such as adding blood to the child's urine or the stool, falsifying the fever, secretly giving child the drugs to make the child throw up diarrhea or have diarrhea, withholding the food, and infecting the intravenous lines to make the child appear or become ill. The mothers do this so that they have the attention of the other people around them, and the possible symptoms by system of MSBP could be mucoskeletal symptoms like limping, broken bones or muscle weakness, nervous symptoms like seizures or headache, respiratory like sleep apnea, respiratory distress, asthma, hypoxia, endocrine symptoms like diabetes because of the mothers may be giving insulin to the child, digestive systems like symptoms like nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, weight loss, disorders requiring parental nutrition, urinary symptoms like frequent UTIs, and other symptoms like rashes, wounds, or ecchymosis could be seen. The degree of severity could be mild, moderate, or severe, and the various symptoms could be falsifying symptoms in the mild, and as the mother may give false history with no clinical correlation, and in moderate cases destruction of evidence is seen, like mother may be adding blood in the samples of the child, and severe symptoms like producing the actual illness by injecting insulin or any other drugs to the children. The characteristics of the child in this syndrome could be they are generally less than 5 years old, and thus they are not able to understand what is being happened to them. The history of frequent contact with the healthcare providers, symptoms only witnessed by the caregiver, not helped by the standard treatment. The siblings with the complicated medical history could be seen, and all the children in the family may be reported with the same. Absent or emotionally distant father could be noted, and the child deteriorates when the discharge is planned. And the characteristics of the mother could be very caring and concerned mother, consistently pushes for various kind of tests and is not ready to accept the diagnosis given by the doctor, and she is very comfortable in the medical setting. The diagnosis could be done by the blood samples used for lab work which do not match the patient's blood type, the presence of the drugs or chemicals in the patient's blood or urine or stool samples, presence of the foreign body like coins or any other pins or anything in the child's body, evaluation of the previous medical records, separation of the mother from the child, and look for the symptom continuation post the separation of the mother from the child. The factors affecting could be the knowledge and awareness of the syndrome of the mother. She might be having all the knowledge and awareness about the syndrome. Warning signs and guidelines. And the characteristics of the perpetrator, she is not ready to, the mother may not be ready to accept the diagnosis given by the doctor, and she is constantly asking for more and more tests to be done. Characteristics of the father could be negligent to the family, or the absence of father could be there. Characteristics of the victim, most of them are newborn to 8 years as described by Weinberg and Hibbard in 1995, and majority of the children facing this syndrome could die before 3 years of age. The management, once the syndrome is identified, child protection and isolation should be done. Parents should be rendered health and acquisitions. The case must be reported, and psychiatric counseling for the parents involved, and even the father, if they are negligent, should be done, and complete isolation from the involved parents should be done to manage this kind of syndrome. Now, the difference between Munchausen syndrome by proxy and child abuse could be: child abuse is characterized by bruises, fractures, burns, and lacerations, whereas MSBP is characterized by frequent hospitalization, illness, and multiple infections. In child abuse, the child is scared of parents and caretakers, whereas in MSBP, they are not scared of their parents. They avoid the contact with medical staff and hospitalization in child abuse, whereas in MSBP, they have frequent hospitalization history. In child abuse, the findings are often specific, whereas in MSBP, they are often vague. The clinical correlation is easily developed in child abuse, whereas it is difficult in MSBP. And the parents pushes for the child discharge in child abuse, whereas in MSBP, they are reluctant to take the discharge. And in child abuse, the needs to be viewed in charge, and in MSBP, the needs to be viewed as devoted mother. Now there is an article about Munchausen syndrome by proxy in the pediatric dentistry, a myth or a reality, by Serban et al. The aim of this was to assess whether such conditions occur in the current pediatric dental setting and to evidence the certain situations in which the pediatric dentist should suspect this form of child abuse. For this, they have given certain guidelines like be carefully aware of the legal responsibilities of disclosure, constantly follow the ethical and medical duties for the general welfare, keep the accurate record, like the written records and the images in the presence of the patients and the parents, use thoroughly and minimally invasive diagnostic tools, always following the risk benefit ratio, so that the parents don't blame the dentist to be causing the harm. The consult a legal or medical legal expert qualified to further assess the injuries, delineate the insurance matters, and manage the potential medical liability issues. They have also given the prompt detection of such conditions should be regarded as one of the duties of the practitioners who should be trained to report the cases. This should be regarded as a form of child abuse and neglect, and responsible caregivers should be held liable for this. Thus, the study concluded that Munchausen syndrome by proxy should be regarded as a reality in the current pediatric dental setting, and dental teams should be trained properly to recognize, assess, and manage such complicated situations. A serial Munchausen syndrome by proxy in the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine by Yunal et al. It is a case report in which the mother was caught on the camera surveillance system of the hospital while closing the nose and mouth of the victim for fabricating the illness. And she also agreed that she had done the same things to her two elder children. And her two elder children had died and they could not be diagnosed. And this is a very, thus the study concluded that this is a very serious form of child abuse with a high risk of repetition, and failure to diagnose might result in the death of the child. The perpetrators of the medical child abuse, a systematic review of 796 cases in Child Abuse and Neglect Journal by Yates et al. And they have found that nearly all the abusers were female, and most of the times the victims' mothers. And most of the mothers were married, that is 75%. The mean caretaker age at the child's presentation was 27.6 years, and the perpetrators were frequently reported to be in healthcare related professions, to have obstetric complications, and to have histories of childhood maltreatment on themselves. The most common psychiatric diagnosis recorded with the factious disorders were disorder imposed on self were 30%, personality disorders were 18%, and depression was 15%. Munchausen syndrome by proxy, another case report of a 5-year-old girl who was brought to hospital by her parents with a 2-day history of fluid filled and crusted skin lesions. And on examination, the child was drowsy and multiple hyperpigmented crusted flakes and vesicles were seen on the face, trunks, and the limbs. On the blood sample taken, there were significant levels of alcohol, and the parents admitted that they used to get money from the local religious organization to claim to have a sick child, and therefore a diagnosis of Munchausen syndrome by proxy was made. This is the clinical picture of the child having the marks of the cigarette burns, because they used to burn the cigarette and place them on the child's skin so that the skin lesions appear. Now starting with the maternal deprivation syndrome. It is a form of neglect that could be either of intentional or unintentional in nature that results in failure to thrive. Therefore, it is also known as non-organic failure to thrive. The causes could be the major cause is that the child under 2 years old is mostly neglected. Dysfunctional caregiver interaction, poverty, child abuse, and parental ignorance could be the other causes. Failure to gain adequate weight, failure of linear growth, and failure to achieve some or all developmental milestones could be seen in this. The mother primary caregiver may appear concerned. The relationship and the physical contact seen between the mother and the child may be absent. The factors could be low level of education, unplanned or unwanted pregnancy, lower socioeconomic status, young age of the parents, mental illness including the severe postpartum depression in the mothers, absence of the father, or absence of a support network, that is the support from the family or the relatives. The symptoms in this could be decreased linear growth of the child according to the age of the child, the lack of personal hygiene because they are neglected by the mothers or the caregivers, interaction problems between the mother and the child because the mother is negligent to the child and therefore the child is not able to share the problems with the mother. Weight less than 5th percentile or inadequate rate of weight gain is seen in these children. These children may avoid people, show anger, fear and anxiety, exaggerate distress, or refuse to engage with other people also. The diagnosis could be done by careful medical evaluation by a doctor, a physical examination, detailed medical history, and simple laboratory test. The patient's growth chart should be noted, and involve the family members and the social service agencies to help the mothers. A child's feeding gradually increased to 150 calories per kg per day should be done, and further hospitalization in severe cases. The management could be done by multidisciplinary team. The programs for young parents, single parents, and the parents having other marital problems should be conducted. Referral should be made as early as possible for the appropriate programs suggested to the parents. Extended family members might be of help in recognizing the problem if it exists. The prevention could be done by imparting education on the prenatal care, preparing the expecting mother for the motherhood, parenting classes for both the parents, and early interventional programs for the parents. The earlier the diagnosis is made, minimal risk is there. Now, starting with the shaken baby syndrome, it is also known as abusive head trauma, shaken impact syndrome, or the whiplash shaken infant. It results from extreme rotational cranial injuries, and it is a severe form of child abuse caused by the accelerated violent shaking of an infant or the child. It is an injury of the head caused by excessive shaking of the infants, and their brain, surrounding vessels, and the nerves are said to be injured due to the rotational forces. The incidence of this is 1 in a million or 2.81 in 1 lakh children. Gutkelch in 1971 was the first one to report this syndrome. John Caffey, a pediatric radiologist, in 1972 termed it as whiplash shaken baby syndrome, and he gave certain radiological findings like cerebral hemorrhages, retinal hemorrhages, encephalopathy, with little or no evidence of extracranial trauma. It could be due to the rupture of the cortical bridging veins. Hemorrhage is more fistular rather than the convexities of the hemisphere. It may be unilateral or bilateral. The shaken baby syndrome hypothesis is given that it may be caused, named as abusive head trauma because it may be considered as a child abuse. The American Academy of Pediatrics in 2009 said that since shaken baby syndrome is widely popular, and therefore this name can be used by the physician and by the public, whereas the pediatrician should use abusive head trauma in their medical charts. And the consideration for this should be it occurs from a less as 5 seconds of shaking. It mostly occurs in the children younger than 2 years of age or may be seen up to 5 years of age. When the children are shaken, the brain bounces back and forth against the skull, causing the cerebral confusion, swelling, and pressure as well as bleeding through the brain. The large veins along the outside of the brain may tear, causing the swelling and increased intracranial pressure, and it may cause the permanent brain death, brain damage, or death of the child. In this, when the baby's brain is banged against the skull when shaken, the small blood vessels in between the brain and the skull can be teared, which may cause bleeding, and the large brain vessels may clot when they are pressed against the brain and the skull, which may cause the mass swelling. Because of the underdeveloped neck muscles, there is no resistance from the child while shaking, and the injuries can further lead to brain damage, retardation, paralysis, blindness, deafness, and death. The sequence of events occurring could be neuraxis damage, apnea, hypoxia, cerebral edema, raised intracranial pressure, reduced perfusion pressure, ischemia, and axonal injuries. And the symptoms seen in the shaken baby syndrome could be vomiting, colic or feeding problems, lethargic, irritable child, shocked, unconscious child, which could be noticed as the child sleeping when the child is unconscious, convulsions with or without altered consciousness, decreased reflexes, signs of retinal hemorrhage and retinal detachment could be seen. There could be difficulty in breathing, bruises on the chest in some cases, fracture of the rib, head enlargement due to chronic subdural hematoma. In the severe cases, comatose state could be noted, and it may often go unnoticed because the parents may believe that the child is often sleeping. May not be any frank physical signs could be seen in this. The investigations for this could be CT or MRI of the brain, chest X-ray, skull radiograph, measurements of the head circumference, scrutinizing the earlier records, examination of the cerebrospinal fluid, and the skeletal survey of the head, hand, feet, long bones, skulls, and the ribs. The emergency management for this could be suspect the injury, provide basic life support to the child, support the breathing of the child, check the retinal injury or the bleeding, confirm the diagnosis with the CT or the MRI, and inform the concerned authorities and report the case. This is a review by the forensic and clinical diagnosis in the shaken baby syndrome between the child abuse and iatrogenic abuse by Duncia et al. And they have given that diagnosis is based on subdural bleeding, rupture of the retinal vessels, traumatic diffuse axonal injuries with the diffuse brain encephalopathy in the absence of external traumatic injuries. Microscopic findings could be diffuse axonal injuries. immunohistochemistry of beta amyloid protein precursor in the pathological findings. And in diagnosis of this syndrome, pediatrician and forensic examiners must take into account the peculiarities or particularities of each case and avoiding the scientific speculation, and always be familiar with the differential diagnosis. The parents' experience of seeking healthcare and encountering the allegations of shaken baby syndrome, a qualitative study by Hogberg et al. And they have said that the parents being wrongly accused of the child abuse and alleged of the shaken baby syndrome evoked emotion of intense stress, but the parents endured because of the successful fight to regain the custody of their child. However, the trauma had a long-term impact on their lives with residual post-traumatic stress symptoms and mistrust towards the healthcare services and the authorities, and the results provide an important interference of restoring the system failures within the child protection services. Acceptance of shaken baby syndrome and abusive head trauma as the medical diagnosis by Narang et al. In the Journal of Pediatrics. SBS and AHT are still generally accepted by the physicians who frequently encountered the cases and considered likely sources of subdural hematoma, severe retinal hemorrhages, and coma, or the death in the young children. Other than a high velocity motor vehicle collision, no alternative theories of causation of these findings are generally accepted, and therefore this could be seen as a medical diagnosis. The effectiveness of an educational video in maternity wards to prevent the self-reported shaking and smothering during the first week of the age, a cluster randomized controlled trial by Fujiwara et al. In Journal of Prevention Science. And they have concluded that screening an educational video on the infants crying and the dangers of shaking and smothering within 1 week after delivering at maternity wards reduces the prevalence by 88% at 1 month of age. The various cultural health practices which could be considered as child abuse could be dry cupping, which is seen mostly in the Asian, East Europe, Middle East, and Latin American countries. In this, they fill the cups with cups are heated and placed on the skin of the child, and it is believed that when the heated cups are placed on the skin, the cooling effect of the air creates a suction effect, and in severe cases, it may also lead to burning on the skin of the child. Molera sida, it is seen in the Latin countries. Molera is the head and sida is the falling of the head. In this condition, when there is a defect on the skull, the child is held upward down, and the head of the child is placed in the water so that the pressure on the skull is increased and that depression is subsided. Sao Gio, which is a cultural practice in Vietnam, and they rub the skin of the girls generally to see the peteke on the skin of the girls, and they consider it as a traditional mark in the Vietnamese countries. The removal of the uvula, it is seen in certain African countries where they remove the uvula as a traditional practice, and they believe that it reduces the causes of the respiratory defects in the children. Food binding is seen in certain Chinese countries where the child of the food are binded like this. Skin piercing is followed in certain countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. Cranial alteration, it is generally seen in the African countries, and the head of the child is tied with a cloth or a rope very tightly so that it gives a particular appearance to their tribe. The sacrification or tattooing, which is generally seen in countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. And tooth extraction is also followed in certain countries where they extract the permanent incisors when the child reaches the teenage. Child abuse, is it accepted in some societies? An article in International Journal of School and Cognitive Psychology. In this, they have reported that female genital mutilation is considered as a violation of the human rights of girls. Tattoo is another socially accepted practice. And the third problem is the working child. The fourth problem they reported was the deeply rooted beliefs in pottery to cure a lot of medical problems. Now, starting with the child neglect. WHO defines child neglect as an intention or omission on the part of the caregiver to provide for the further development of the child in all the spheres, which may include health, education, nutrition, emotion, development, shelter, and safe conditions. The National Child Abuse and Neglect Data Systems in 2017 defined it as maltreatment that refers to failure of care given by the caretaker to provide the needed age-appropriate care, although financially being able to do so. And people in the close contact are frequently the ones to know and report these conditions. Polanski in 1975 defined child neglect as a condition in which the caretaker is responsible for the child either deliberately or extraordinary inattentiveness and permits the child to experience avoidable sufferings and fails to provide the things that are essential for the developing person's physical, intellectual, and the emotional capacities. The causes could be unwanted child or the female child, psychotic illness, overambitious mother, the drug or substance abuse by the parents, inadequate parenting skills, poor socioeconomic status, unemployed or the large family, immigration due to certain conditions like war, loss of the family member which is being blamed on the child. And the types could be physical neglect, emotional neglect, nutritional neglect, educational, medical, or dental neglect. Starting with physical neglect, it includes the majority of cases of the maltreatment. The failure to support the physical needs of the child, like clothing, food, shelter, etc. They do not provide education to the child, and they refuse to give needed care for the physical injuries faced by the child. Abandonment, inadequate supervision, and expulsion from the home are generally seen in physical neglect. Coming to emotional neglect, parents fail to provide love, affection, and care to the child. They generally avoid the child and ignore them. Verbal assaulting or threatening is seen. It is very similar to emotional abuse. Terrorizing the child is done. Depriving the child of the emotional needs, that is, rejection of the child, is done. And this is far more devastating because it could many times go unnoticed. And when the child turns adult, it may lead to poor self-image, low self-esteem, and even suicidal tendencies in the child. Now, comparing the emotional neglect with the emotional abuse, emotional neglect is a consistent failure of a parent or caretaker to provide a child with the appropriate support, attention, and affection. Whereas emotional abuse is the chronic pattern of behavior such as belittling, humiliating, and ridiculing a child. Starting with educational neglect, it is a failure to educate the child, making them work at home. In India, generally, the girl child education is discontinued because the younger brother or the sibling has to be educated. The lack of confidence can seriously impact the normal psychological growth and development of these children, and not educating the child with special needs because the parents think the education is not necessary for the child with learning disabilities or special needs. Nutritional neglect, it is the failure to supply the essential nutrients to the child for the normal growth and development. High mortality rates is seen with nutritional neglect in the developing nations. Obesity is also a manifestation of overnutrition. That is the failure of parents to realize the nutritive needs of the growing child. And stress resulting from the maltreatment could be compensated by increasing the food intake, resulting in the uh, obesity in these children. The stress also affects the metabolism, and therefore there is an increase in the appetite of the child, which may lead to obesity. The medical neglect, it is the failure to provide the medical facilities to the child. Despite knowing the known history of the disease, they fail to render the treatment for the child and not maintaining a proper immunization schedules because certain parents believe that immunization for the children is not necessary, and therefore they do not provide them with the adequate vaccines. Now coming to the dental neglect, American Association of Pediatric Dentistry has defined it as the willful failure of the parent or the guardian to seek and follow through with the treatment necessary to ensure a level of oral health essential for adequate function and freedom from the pain and infection. The dental caries, periodontal disease, and other oral conditions associated with the pain, infection, and the loss of function could be noted. It adversely affects the learning, communication, nutrition, and growth and development of the child. The factors associated could be family isolation, lack of finances, parental ignorance, or the lack of perceived value of the oral health by the parents. These are the conditions which could be seen in the dental neglect, like traumatic tooth could be seen, rampant caries could be seen, which are untreated, severe early childhood caries could be unnoticed, and poor oral hygiene could be noticed in the children. The cycle of the dental neglect, which is not understood by the parents generally, that when the treatment is done at an earlier age, the cost of the treatment is also lower and the child suffers less. The effects of the on the children of the neglect, as described by schools in 1993, the physical effects could be failure to thrive in the infants, and dirty infant skin rashes could be seen. In the preschool children could be short, thin build of the children, dirty or unkempt thin hairs could be seen. In the school children, they again the dirty, unkempt hair or the short or thin stature of the children could be noted. In young adults, also the similar effects are seen. In the developmental effects, In infants, the generalized delay is seen. In preschool children, there is language delay and poor attention is seen. In school children, there are learning difficulties and lack of confidence. And in young person, they fail to go to even school. In the behavior effects, the infants may be anxious and unresponsive. In preschool, they may be overactive or aggressively over friendly. In school children, they may be overactive, aggressive with no peers or friends. And in the that age group also, they may have the parents might complain of the wetting of the bed. In the young persons, that is the young children, they may have habits like smoking, drinking, or substance abuse. They may have habits like stealing or self harm, or and also avoiding going to the schools. Now, the association between severe dental caries and child abuse and neglect, in the Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, in this they have seen that out of a group of 376 children, 205 underwent the procedure because of the caries during the period, and child abuse and neglect was established in the 47% children, and among them only 27 underwent the treatment, and therefore this study concluded that there appears a strong association between severe dental caries and child abuse and neglect, and therefore severe dental caries should be regarded as an early symptom of child abuse or neglect. The management of the dental neglect, the dentist should be certain that caregivers understand the explanation of the disease, and they should emphasize that the treatment has to be done, and the implications of the oral symptoms should be explained to the parents, and the complications which may occur if the treatment is not done should be also explained by the dentist to the parents. The attempt to assist the financial finding the financial aids, transportation, or the public facilities could be done by the dental providers. The parents should be reassured that the appropriate analgesic and aesthetic procedures will be done so that the child is comfortable during the dental procedures, and they do not need to fear the child safety. If despite of these efforts the parents fail to obtain the therapy, the cases should be reported to the appropriate child protective service agencies. The other uh, things which could be taken by a dentist could be strengthen the economic support to the families, change the social norms to support the parents, and positive parenting should be given to the parents, provide the quality care and education in the early life, enhance the parenting skills to promote the healthy child development, and intervene to lessen the harms and prevent the further risk. The consequences of parental burnout, it is its specific effect on the child neglect and violence. The results in this study suggested that parental burnout has a statistical similar effect to the job burnout on addictions and the sleep problems, and it is also seen as a specific effect on the child related outcomes, that are the child neglect and violence. Therefore, the parents having the job burnout, that is excessive stress due to the job, may be seen on as an effect on the children also. Awareness of the child abuse and neglect among the working parents in Chennai, India, a CAP survey by Preeti et al. In this, majority of the working parents were aware of the various parental and environmental factors that could result in the child maltreatment, and just nearly half of them had taken the proper steps to prevent it. Thus, the study concluded that proper steps have to be taken by the parents and each member of the society as a whole to prevent and reduce the incidence of the child abuse and neglect. The child neglect and the broader context of child victimization by Turner et al. The finding in this study suggested that physical neglect is directly linked to economic stresses, while low education parents' education is related with both physical and supervisory neglect, and both of them were associated with the risk of other maltreatments. The physical neglect was particularly strongly related to sexual abuse and witnessing the sibling abuse, and neglect is significantly also associated with the trauma symptoms in the children. The care for the children with the dental neglect, identification of the problems and approaches to be solving them. The steps that this study proposed were drafting of the precise guidelines, education and training of the dental students and the dentist in general, mandatory periodical dental health screenings, the establishment of an interdisciplinary cooperation with the public health system, education of the families, and adequate financial compensation for a professional and optimized case management. The British Society of Pediatric Dentistry, they have given a policy on dental neglect in the children by Harris et al. They have given certain recommendations for the treatment provision, like children with the severe dental cases should be considered a healthcare priority, and they may be also be given additional support as they may be due to dental neglect. The dentist treating the children with the dental neglect must follow the local procedures and make a child protection referral. Children's view must be considered according to the age and maturity. And local systems should be in place to ensure the rigorous follow-up of all the children who have dental disease but fail to attend the appointments. The training of the dentist as described in this protocol, all the dental staff must have regular child protection trainings, and for the clinical staff, this must include the recognition of the signs and of abuse and neglect and how to respond when concerned about a child. This should be mandatory components of dental training at every level, and appropriate experienced members of the society are committed where responsible to working with the local colleagues to provide the dental input, and training and supporting in report writing and courtroom skills should be available for the court witnesses. Since we have now covered about the all kind of abuse like physical, emotional and sexual abuse, which was discussed last time, and all kinds of neglects, which are physical, emotional, nutritional, educational, medical and dental neglects, and further about the management of these cases, reporting, documentation, the role of the dentist, and especially we as a the role of the periodontist in such cases will be discussed in the next seminar. Now I would like to conclude by saying it takes a huge effort to free yourself from a memory, as said by Paulo Coelho. Therefore, we should take an effort to free the from the memory of the child abuse and neglect by remembering the phase PANDA, that is prevent abuse and neglect through the dental awareness. Thank you.